Hello, my name is Zach, and this is the Zach Think Share podcast. Uh, this is uh, this is the very first episode I'm doing with an actual guest. I brought my dad in for this one. My dad has been a source of inspiration throughout my life. A lot of people ask me, um, how did I get out of being a man child? Well, I'm definitely still one, but like, what was my aha moment? And I think there's a lot to point to that it's a little hard to point to because I think my parents put in a lot of the groundwork for who I am today, and there's so much intangible. I can point to books, I can point to moments, but like, I know that the first 18 years of my life, while I really lived under the roof, it's really hard to say how much they put into me. So I wanted to shed a little bit of light on the upbringing by asking my dad some questions here today. Forgive me if this first guest experience is a little clunky, but Dad, thank you for coming on and taking the time to share some of our stories together.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Dad, my first question for you is, when I was growing up with you, a huge part that I'm going to tear up saying this. We're going for it, Dad. A huge inspiration that you were for me was you would write into the paper, speaking out against the a lot of like really far kind of alt-right people that were hating on gay marriage and kind of talking ill of gay people in like a political way, like not typical today's hate speech, but they were talking about the problems with the potential laws, and you would be writing these essays. You'd be checking with mom and like having her reread it. You'd spend so much time on really making sure your words were articulated well. And what I'd love to know, is what was it that inspired you to write those? What, like,
Um, well, I have to say it's your mother, my wife. 'Cause I remember even from the first day I met her, she had a gay friend, and over the years, she's she's always been a protector of kids in her class that were bullied for one reason or another, and of course, oftentimes it was gay kids were getting picked on, and she went into even more depth and realized that some of the bullies were gay themselves, and it was a way for them to show that I'm very manly. If I pick on the gay kids, no one will think I'm gay. So she really thought about it through layers that most people aren't even aware of, and I really learned from her. Uh, and the thing about writing to the paper all sort of started. Do you want me to talk about that?
yeah.
Okay, so given that background, I felt I kind of I didn't really have gay friends myself as much as your mom did, but I got it. It's like, and then in 2004, the Massachusetts Supreme Court said it was a court case. And the state Supreme Court said, it's unfair that gay people aren't allowed to marry who they want. Another man, a man with a man, a woman with a woman. And they issued that ruling. And I've always been interested in politics. And when I heard that, I wasn't really in those kind of conversations, but when it sort of hit the general news, I was thinking, And I thought, I didn't know that was on the horizon, but the more I thought about it, the more I said, it kind of makes sense, marry who you want. It's an issue of freedom. It's, like a human right. And so I, noticed some letters were, very anti that. And I said, wait a minute, so that kind of got me going. And The writing part, as you know, I'm a writing tutor at a college. So writing is the activity of writing and writing for a purpose. It just appealed to me. And, we have a local newspaper, the Sun Chronicle. Uh, it serves, several cities. And they print almost all the letters that people submit. They've not printed very, very few of mine. So, and I always wanted them to be articulate and not, and to sound articulate. And, you know, so I felt it was really important to answer all these letters that were, gay bashing and, saying, no, 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 they shouldn't have the right to marry. And if gay people marry, it's just an empty thing. It's like you people don't even know what the gay experience is.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I do, but they're people just like us, and I could imagine that. So anyways, I never, I've always been interested in politics. Do you favor this or that? And I felt this was one thing I felt so solid about that I could just write and just advocate for this in a way that, there's so many issues in politics where, you can be on this side and that side, and, in the end, it's kind of arbitrary. But this was like a human right that really affected people's lives down to their core. So I always felt that it was a no-brainer to me, unlike any of the other issues. So I just went with it.
So I feel like a lot of people, I think including myself, there's a period of time when you're thinking about posting stuff on the internet, or you're thinking about writing, speaking out on an issue that matters to you, and there's going to be some sort of, maybe not backlash, but like some resistance somewhere. Did you have to overcome any sort of like? Did you find yourself needing to summon some courage to write some of those, or was it like that much of a no-brainer that you're like, well, these people are out here on this platform talking their BS, like, dude, like it's a no-brainer for me to respond to that? Or was there some like putting aside of like concern that there could be some negative energy coming your way?
Uh, no, I didn't feel afraid of it at all. I feel like, New England is a part of the world where when it comes down to the bottom line, uh, I mean, New Hampshire claims to be the live free or die state, but New Englanders in general are, are, I would say, if there was a slogan for us, it would be, "It's not bothering you. What's the problem with these people doing that?" And gay marriage does not affect anyone else.
Mm.
Uh, it's just, religious, as far as I can tell, it's just religious dogma or people that just don't like it because it's different, and it's like, they don't like the idea of, gay relationships, and just turn, for whatever reason, it's either religious prejudice or social prejudice or whatever. And it just seemed like a totally rich vein for me to tap into by speaking out and exposing these people for what they were saying, and what their motivation was.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So to answer your question, I never felt like I had to summon up any courage at all.
I feel like that is a part of how the environment that I grew up in, that like if there is something, you just talk about it. There, it didn't require courage, and I think that's sort of where I've found probably some of my voice in being able to talk about the things that I do, is having someone to look up to that didn't find themselves needing to require courage to post. It just felt natural. I wanted to shift directions a little bit here. I think that was one of the big ones that I think really inspires me about your life, and how I think you've maybe like it, it's so funny about parenting is you probably I think there are a lot of things you banged your head against the wall trying to get me to learn. Um, and I probably learned a lot from those things. And some of the things I remember most, are probably like the fact that was the first question that really popped up for me that I wanted to share about, that I get excited about talking about, that you've done, that I get emotional about. Like that's the thing that I remember. And that had nothing to do with your parenting of me, really. It was more like that was just a self-expression for you. um
Um, well, I don't know. It's just part of who I was, and I'm not so sure I agree with you that it wasn't part of your parenting. Obviously, I mean, even to this day, I know by the fact that you keep mentioning this. You've been mentioning this for the last 10 or 15, 10 years. I Obviously it did have a profound impact on you, and I wasn't even really aware that that was happening to you.
yeah.
You know, uh, and it's funny. I Even when gay marriage, so 2004, there was that court ruling. It became legal in Massachusetts. You would think, oh, it's legal. I don't have to write about this anymore. But actually, as it turned out, I probably wrote for, I can't remember how many years it was until the Supreme Court made same-sex marriage uh, a right for the whole country. That was the point at which I stopped, because just because Massachusetts had it didn't stop people from complaining about it and fighting it and arguing and advocating against it. Well, one of the main things I did, when I was writing, I always compared gay marriage with like an expansion of our rights in this country. It started with, the newly freed slaves. Men were allowed to vote, and then women were allowed to vote. And then the civil rights movements came, and African Americans got more freedom. So I just saw gay marriage, same-sex marriage, as a continuation of the American march to greater freedoms.
Hmm. Dad, I think I know this is maybe an odd transition, but I think one of the other interesting things that I think similar, like it wasn't like a direct part of your parenting, or like there's probably no part of the agenda like, oh, we should make sure that this happens so that he is exposed to this. But mom was I think rarely the sole breadwinner, but she was typically the main, or like the higher breadwinner within our house.
Yes, just she was the primary breadwinner, I'd say. Yeah.
Do you think so? Sometimes when I think about like what was modeled for me growing up, I think mom mentioned this when I was talking to her about like, what do you think has made me into like how I see the world today? I think that might have played a significant part in it. I know that a lot of men, and a ton of these videos that we see online about like men being alphas, etc., is like it's highly their feeling of masculinity, their feeling of like being a good man in today's society has like a strong correlation with how much money they bring home, and being like the either sole or main breadwinner. I feel like that didn't phase you. And at the same time, I have no idea, because I don't think I've ever really talked to you about it. Has
Mm.
that been like a part of your ego that you've had to set aside in the society that we live in? Or has it been something that has just been like kind of what so, and there's never really been any thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and the tradition of men being the breadwinner was, that was a thing, that was the part of the culture. Um, but as things, and uh, when I met your mom, Joan. We were kind of equal, and then and anyways, like I say, she turned out to be the primary breadwinner. So um, the only person that mattered to me, the only person that really mattered was Joan. And as long as I contributed any way I could, even if it was monetarily less than she was okay with it, and I was okay with it. So I haven't really thought much about it.
Hmm. I feel like there are probably loads of men today that if like it appalls me sometimes when I see these men that are like, oh, she has a job, oh, she earns more than me, oh man, she's not for me, like she's gonna die alone, like it doesn't compute for me how men feel that emasculated, or like that like their egos are just so hurt by the possibility that a woman could be making more or the same as them.
Yeah,
um I know
I can
you've probably
I,
haven't seen as many of those videos as I have, but
I can get that. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was able to change with the times, but it's embedded in the culture, and those things aren't so easily overcome.
mm,
So I understand it. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I mean, boys and men are trying to figure out what is their role,
mm,
in society, because, it's sort of opened up for everyone, and women oftentimes earn more than men. So I think the major thing is, how does your spouse feel about it? If the spouse is maybe there are women out there who are angry that they are earning more than the husband. I haven't really seen that, but I'm sure that must exist someplace. It would be a problem in that situation if Joan was like, "What's wrong with you?" or what, that I was somehow less. But I never ever felt that way. She never gave me that vibe at all.
yeah, I think
So,
that
so
is that's
that
probably
was
a huge
important.
part of the reason that like that's been ingrained in me is there's never any issue. There's no vibe in our house that like, oh, she's earning more than him, therefore he's less of a man, or she's too much of too. I think that was probably a privilege to grow up inside of, in that
Yeah,
like I don't know, it was like inoculated to seeing that, and like
yeah,
there was zero issue around it, which kind of brings me to another question of another kind of place where we see traditional masculinity, I think, run the way that men think is like, don't cry, don't show your fear, don't show your
yeah.
emotions. And I
Hmm.
know that my mom, she loves talking about the fact that I think it was the first time you guys were either on a date or watched a movie or watched A Wonderful Life that you cried at the end. And like that was a moment for her that she's like, oh wow, this guy, like, he's emotionally available, like he has some vulnerability to him. It's something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it requires a certain type of space to grow up inside of, or an environment or group of people to be around that men have that space to be that. What do you think it was in your upbringing, or as you were growing up, that gave you the ability, because I think that's rare, like hearing about a guy your age when you were in your 20s, so is what, the 80s, the 90s, like
30s, really. I was in
yeah,
my 30s.
right, no, I know, but like the 1980s, 1990s, like for you to be able to cry in front of a woman is so much different than what it is in 2023 or 2024. So what do you think it might have been that like gave you the permission to let those emotions out?
Well, I don't think I was really, it's funny. This is just one little clip in our relationship. I mean, there's lots of movies that are supposedly tear jerkers, as they call them, but I do have a detached feeling with most movies, but this particular movie just got to me. It's just such an emotional ending, you know, and I sort of get swept up away with it every time. Well, I've seen it so many times now. I don't know if I still am, but yeah, it's just about. I mean, I think the major point is here. I'm not. Um, I don't feel any need to hide my feelings about, you know, that I have to appear a certain way. I
Mm.
mean, I think as men, we're sort of taught not to cry, not, uh, you know, no one specifically said don't cry, but
Oh no, a
just
lot of people did specifically say don't cry. Like hundreds of thousands of them did.
okay.
Maybe
Well,
not to
anyway,
you, but
yeah. Well, you know, you just sort of learn that, you know, men are kind of, you know, stoic and steadfast. But I wasn't overly concerned with having that kind of, you know, for me, that would be inauthentic to sort of, you know, it's like you're pretending to be a certain way. I say, if, you know, if you feel like crying, you know, I did, felt no need to rush out of the room. Well, when we say crying, it sounds like a bit of an you know, yes, it brought tears to my eyes.
hmm.
So, I didn't feel like I needed to hide that. So because it was just authentic, I didn't really think of it in those terms, but I could
I
just
think I want to
I could just
pause.
be who I was with John.
Hmm. I think the reason I'm asking is I think I want to help create that space. I want parents out there to be able to create that space for their kids when they didn't have that opportunity themselves. And I'm curious. I mean, I think you did just a good job of giving me that space. I don't know what you did necessarily to make me feel permission to show those emotions when, I mean, literally I remember still in like fourth, fifth, sixth grade, like I was labeled a crybaby. I remember there were a handful of times when I was crying and all of my peers would like look and be like appalled by the fact that I was crying out loud in front of people. And I kind of let my emotions hang out there for people to see. And I think there was a lot of me that felt pretty judged by it. I think I was very insecure about it. Um, in a lot of ways, I think that it might have held me back almost socially, um, maybe up until high school when I got into student council, and that was a huge opportunity for me to find almost like a slightly different breed of teenagers to spend time around. But is there anything
I
that you can name or point to that you purposefully gave me the space to let those emotions out?
well, I but only in the sense that, of course, as I mean, as your parents, we would certainly, you know, I mean, we didn't try to discourage you from showing your emotions, I don't think, but I can't really think of any specific circumstances, but you know, if you felt sad or you were in tears, you know, it's just what was happening. We didn't, you know, try to tell you, oh, don't, you're a boy, you don't, you know, we never did anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
like,
I want to mention something else that it, you're probably not that much aware of is that my own father had a very, very hands-off uh, relationship with me in terms of me developing and growing up. I probably talked to you and you were sick of it. uh, but my own father never talked to me.
mm,
I mean, we talked, but not about, you know, where do you want to go to college or, well, I was the first generation to go to college, but there's never, I never really had the kind of guidance and I probably overdid it. I don't know if I overdid it with you or I did it just right, but because I was raised by somebody who grew up in the 30s and 40s, you know, so the culture was a bit different then. Never had those conversations with my own father. I'm not sure he even knew what to tell me.
Mm.
Um, and I spent my life, learning about life. I was curious about everything. I wanted to, being in my late teens and early 20s, I just wanted to find out everything I could. And I guess I did. And then when you came along, I wanted to impart a lot of that to you. So I went from having hardly any discussion with my father about important things. And, I kind of have those conversations with my mother, but not even that much. Uh, and then I come to you and it's like I learned so much. I just wanted to impart everything to you. So I was probably talking to you and guiding you more than you really wanted, but
Mm.
you know, you probably weren't aware of that sort of sequence that happened when I grew up compared to how you grew up.
Another question I wanted to ask is so you and I, we did the Landmark Forum together about a decade ago,
Yes.
little over,
Mhm.
which I think was a pretty pivotal moment for us and for my life. And I remember when you went through it, one of the really hard things. So I remember you were kind of going to that weekend, like, yeah, I'll do it with him. He'll get something out of it. You had done the training back when it was called EST back in the 70s. And, it did a lot for you back then. And I think it occurred to me that you weren't really expecting to get a whole lot of the weekend, but it was more for me. And I
Yeah.
remember at some point, it kind of popped for you was that you had been resenting mom in some ways for it. I think she's a really great talker. She's a really great question asker and like accidental interviewer. Like when my friends would come over to play video games, she'd end up talking with them for 20 minutes, be like, hey guys, came to play video games. What's going on here? Um, and I think in a lot of ways, she almost accidentally, like not in a malicious way, just like in an accidental way, like almost monopolizes conversations. She is super curious about like whoever she's talking with. And
Yeah.
I know that that's been almost a challenge for you over the years because you have to like work a little harder to like almost keep up with her in terms of like talking with me. And I remember part of what I think was powerful for that weekend for both of us was that we recognized a lot of the interpersonal connection I had with mom, you didn't have as much of with me, because when she would have those conversations and you'd be like, okay, well, I'm getting kind of pushed out here. Like I can't even get a word in. We started having more intentional conversations between the two of us about like who we were as separate human beings rather than like father, son.
Hmm.
What do you think it was about, like, do you remember what it was that like clicked with you that you kind of realized that that was an issue that was going on, sort of that I feel like you weren't even present to a resentment that you had for her, but it was like all of a sudden it got really clear for you. Do you remember what it was that like helped you see that?
No, no, I did feel it. Like I just remember, when you were going to school in the evening, we'd all sit down and have supper together. And I always admired stories about families that discussed politics at the table and, things like that, what's happening in the world. And, with mom, it was all about, what happened in school today, who are your friends, what are they up to? And, I know, oh, so and so's mother, I know her, so it was all personal stuff. So, that was the one thing that I regretted that I couldn't push through because I really, I know that since you've left the house, you become interested in, political issues and the outside world and all that. And unfortunately, I was I was unable to break through the conversations that were on a more personal level.
Mm.
So yeah, it did happen at the time, and I couldn't break through, much to my chagrin, but uh, it turned out pretty good anyway. So
I
so I mean, I think the forum just was a place that it's a place where you can think about these things that you don't often think about, and maybe they're affecting you, maybe they're not. Yeah, so it was for me to go. For me, it was sort of I actually did. It was called the S training back in the 80s. It's 1983. I took it, so almost it was 30 years to the year, and then I did the landmark forum, which seemed very 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 similar, but they said it was different. I'm not sure in what way, but um, yeah. So it was really great to hear all the same things, but that it was just an opportunity to talk about things you didn't normally talk about. Now that was one of them.
I know that it's a couple of the other cool things I think that have opened up. Obviously, so I met Alyssa at Landmark in the follow-up course, the advanced course,
Mm-hmm.
and then you and me took a couple other things together, uh, and you ended up doing the Introduction Leaders program that I did as well. When you're going through that, you seem to have found a new, it almost occurs to me as odd, but at the same time I get it, uh, like an interest in dancing almost without music, like just spontaneous dancing. And I know that you're I'm looking forward to the day, Dad, that you finish your memoir book. Was it Dancing in the Street? um, and
Uh,
I wonder what is it that inspires you so much about like wanting to do that? Because I think every time I see you do it, like I giggle a little bit, like it feels silly to me, but at the same time, like I know there's like a childlike spirit to the excitement that you have about it. Um, yeah, what is it that like gets you going about that?
um, okay, just a little lead up to that. Um, so when we did that program, and you didn't really. So it was June of that year, 2013. We'd done the forum, and you were like, there was something about it you really liked. And I wasn't sure if you were getting it, but you kept signing up for more courses. And I just wanted to, if you were going to sign up for courses, I wanted to be there too, because I felt like as an adult, we were just growing apart and not really having a relationship. So I really, I'm not sure I really wanted to do all those courses, but if you were doing them, I, I just joined along. And then they had the leadership program that they have. And I was like, okay, that's enough for me. I done the programs but the leadership program, that was a whole different, that was something that was really rigorous. It was,
That shit was hard.
yeah. But anyways, at one point I wanted to do it too. I did it. And now from all over the Northeast, we went to New York City. And people got up and talked and shared, and one of the areas was self-expression. In one of the times that we went to New York City, I don't think I thought of it this way at the time, but now I'm thinking I'm back in my 20s trying to explore and find out everything that I was interested in, and one of them was self-expression. And there was this one woman who seemed very self-expressed, and during the dinner breaks, we break up, and I said, "Hey, whoever you're having dinner with, can I join along?" Because people would go out in groups and eat, and she seemed to be, well, not seemed to be. She was very self-expressed. She was from, I think she was from Quebec, and And at the end, she said, "Oh, I'll get you into self-expression." So she had a recorder with her and turned, it was the end of the weekend. As soon as we broke, she says, "Okay." She got out her boom box and and she started playing it, and we started dancing in the room where we just had the seminar for the weekend. And then she said to me, I think this was maybe like the first weekend, and she said, in another few weeks when we meet here again, she said, "I'm going to show you the next step. We're going to dance in the street." And I was like, I don't know. I was just, totally taken in by it. It's just, so I was thinking about this the whole time. When we come back, we're going to do dancing in the street. And then the next weekend came, and I went into the Quebec group, and I was looking for her, and they said, "Oh, she dropped out." So I said, "Well, I mean, I could dance in the street, I guess. I guess I don't really need her." She was just going to be, and actually, it turned out to be a pretty good thing. So I went around and I found people and said, "Hey, anyone interested in dancing in the street?" And this was this was a space where everyone could just be the way they were. And our mutual friend Amy Batuski, who is now a seminar leader in her own right, she's doing her own programs.
Yeah, Desire on
Uh,
Fire.
I had sat beside her, and I got how free and expressed she was. And I was just walking around trying to find anyone who would dance in the street with me. And so I got there early, and lo and behold, she walks through the door, and I said, "Bingo, I know she'll say yes." She didn't ask any question, and she said, "Sure." And we went out, we started dancing in the street. Before I knew it, a few more people were joining in. So I had somebody take my phone and take pictures of us while we were doing it. And I was like, I was so proud of myself for just doing it on my own. And it was probably better that way, because I just would have been, if the other woman had showed up, I just would have followed what she did. But anyways, sorry about the long story. But I always liked dancing. And to do it in the street was, I don't know, the visual effect of the photo was just great. So that's why uh, I just thought it was really cool, because who does that? It's always cool when you can find something unique and it's fun, and nobody else is doing it.
True. It's not easy to get people to dance in the street with no music. I think I've actually tried to do it before and failed because I was inspired from you. And
Yeah, well, I actually bought a little speaker, which feeds from my iPhone, and which you can get music. I you know I think I may have used that, but anyways, yeah, it's there's some logistical problems with the. But I started doing that a few times. Yeah, I really broke out, and I don't think I really got what I was supposed to get, but that was fine. I'm sure the organization didn't mind. Their attitude is, you get what you get.
hmm,
So I got dancing in the street. And the other thing was, I loved all these people from Canada, and I was bemoaning the fact on the last weekend, I'm never going to see you guys again. I said, "Hey, why don't you come to one of our meetings up in Toronto?" So that was like a light bulb went off. And I got my passport renewed, and yeah, I organized it. So I took a weekend trip up to Toronto. So I felt really proud of myself. I said, "Wow, for being," just went up there, and I just communicated with people. Can anyone lend me a couch to sleep on? And people said yes, and then it fell through, and somebody else said yes, that fell through. But I ended up on somebody's couch that I arranged when I arrived, when I arrived up there. So it all worked out. So yeah, these were my forays into self-expression that I had really sort of neglected this part of my life to be self-expressed and go out and do the things that I just wanted to do just because they were fun.
What do you think was something that you wish you had pursued in self-expression earlier in your life, either maybe when I was young or before I was born?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Yeah. Um, One of the big things I got now, I went to the forum with you because I wanted you to get something out of it. I'm not sure that I got that much out of it, but I kept going to uh, various events that they held, and this might have been a year and a half later. Somebody said something that just, it's like a shot between the eyes. They said, "Oh, what are some of your obstacles, or what are the barriers in your life?" And somebody said resignation, and it just hit me between the eyes. I said, "I am so resigned to having this life that I don't really enjoy that much."
Mm.
And I immediately signed up for sailing lessons. Now, I took the lessons and I really enjoyed it, and I really considered, am I going to do more sailing? I don't know. It was so physically, it was kind of physically difficult as an older person to be doing this. And, I sort of let it go, but I did go out and try it, and I sort of made peace with it that I wasn't going to be sailing much. Um, so yeah, that was one thing that it's not that I, did it and became a sailor, but it was something I had totally forgotten. I had pushed out since a teenager. I went to summer camp and we had they were little tiny, they called them sunfish or sailfish. And it was like a surfboard with a sail on it. And I said, wow, I love this. I said, I've got to do this sometime. And I like totally, it just got left at the end of the list every time. I totally forgot about it. So even though I didn't really become a sailor, at least I resolved it for myself.
Yeah. Well, Dad, thank you for joining me today. Again, this is my pilot guest episode, if you will. I know that yeah.
This is just like Amy Batuski. She has a podcast, and her first guest was her mother.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I think the people that are close to us that I think we have the most in common with, that we can probably speak to almost the easiest. I look forward to, I hope we can convince Mom to come on one of these days. I think she'll have a lot to share, but I know she's a little queasy about being on the internet like this. So thank you for diving in with me. I have the feeling that you'll be back again in the not so distant future.
Okay.
I know that what I'll likely do is I'll post some of these on Instagram and tag you as a collaborator. I don't know if you'll accept them, but if someone were inspired by your story, or talking about like the letters that you wrote, I'll probably invite them to DM you there if you know how to receive DMs on Instagram.
I'm not sure I ever had them, or if I did, I don't know that I do. So
sorry.
I probably
if people want to get in touch with you, I'll just tell them to DM me and I can give them your email address or something.
Okay. All right.
Love you, Dad. Very well. I'll see you tomorrow, right? Or
yes.
The next week. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. All right. I'll show you some stuff. Bye, Dad. I love you.
Love you too.
And don't exit yet.
Okay.
Stop.